Hello and good morning, day, evening, or night, depending on the time of day that you're watching this video slash stream. And I want to welcome all of you back to building on this. Um, this episode consists of Legos architecture line once again, and it is concerning set number 21028, New York City. I hope I strike an interest with this set in you guys, and I look forward to building it a lot. I've had this for quite some time. I never really had the time to actually build it, so I thought, what better time than today? All right. So I already opened the box and I set everything aside so that we can build here on this space once again. By the way, I love the way that the architecture line opens up with the cardboard boards opening upwards instead of on the side like it usually does. And we are greeted with lots and lots of different parts. I'll just show it to you in the cam. Maybe you can see it a little better like this. And let's just part everything out for now. So I do not see any numbered bags in this build so far. So maybe it is one of those a little bit older sets where they did not always have different steps to it. So also to mention it right away, this set is from 2016, so it is a little bit on the of an older style, especially in the instruction manual too. So let's scroll through it a little bit just to see how it is printed. And yeah, it's also one of the reasons why I prefer using the PDF manual. As you can see, this is a very dark background together with lots of not very visible parts. So we, or at least I would probably struggle quite a lot to find everything properly. Also, I see a little bit worse than I usually do because I'm not wearing glasses. So, alright, now that we have emptied the box, we can set it aside and use it for all the plastic bags that we get delivered with this. Let me just scroll through it a little bit. So in the beginning, as always, we have a little bit of an introduction of the city or what the build is about. And then we also see different buildings that are included, like the Statue of Liberty or many other ones that are rather famous, like the Empire State Building. And then we have the same thing in a couple of different languages, which we will just scroll through really quickly. Also, apparently, we are getting a part. How is it called? A brick separator. Terribly sorry, a brick separator. We are getting an orange model of those. And yeah, we apparently really have no building steps, so we will just dump all of it out onto the table. Which is a little bit unusual for me at this point, but only because I've built too many recent Lego sets over the last couple of days or weeks. I've been used to this sort of method when, for example, building stuff from Blue Bricks, if you know that name, which is also a building blocks manufacturer similar to this one. Alright, so we have lots and lots of different parts, which we probably not all of them are needed at this point, but I'm just gonna empty out what we have. I kind of enjoy this sort of experience where everything is just put together a little bit more messy. I don't know, I just appreciate this sort of building style actually quite a bit because you are more focused on actually finding the parts a little bit too instead of just putting together everything as quickly. Alright, let's get started with the build by layering the foundation. So, by the way, I always set these brick separators aside. I prefer using the turquoise one that I always have on my desk because I love the color purple. Alright, so we are starting out with a layer of black base plates which are being interlocked by some other plates up top, and we are building up the full side or like the foundation of it with plates before actually putting any buildings up top. Best of greetings to anybody watching this live as well. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. Alright. We are looking for a 1x1 plate to finish step number 7 together with this 2x8 studs long plate, and we are so far at this point. As you can see, we have layered some black plates for the front, and now we are continuing to build up the area. Step number 10, as you can see, we are getting more into this side, and also we have some front rows of studs too. By now, up front where there will be a couple of plates and a name tag that will be put there later on. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So I guess the overall build is like 28 to 30 studs long, counting out 2 of these 14 long plates that are being put next to each other. It's repeating itself a little bit up front, as everything needs to be placed a couple of times to actually reach the length that we are going for. So we are looking at this at the moment. Up front there's more layering to be done now, with more plates which are getting stacked. I very much appreciate that they are sticking to this color scheme and that they have not implemented too many different colors into the bottom layer of it. That's always something very worthwhile of mentioning when building Lego sets. Maybe it's also a little bit to do with the fact that this is an older model, and 2016 they apparently had some of these bricks left to put in. As you can see, we are reaching the overall maximum width, I think, very soon. Let's see what else we are implementing. It will be the Empire State Building, I think, if not completely mistaken. We will see. I have to actually check which one would be the building on the right. I have not exactly looked at the picture yet. We will figure it out. Thank you so much for following. I very much appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. Alright. So there's a little bit of a groove that is being left open. If you have built architecture sets from this lineup before, usually with these cityscapes, when they implement stuff like this, there will be hooks on the other side of the build. So for the building, it will be the negative part to this brick up here, which I hope you can see. And usually this hook in here pretty usefully, because you can actually take it apart without actually breaking apart the whole set. That's very useful if you have to transport it or if you have to move. Alright, so we're looking for an angled connector here on the other side. To finish with it, I would be shooting for the year 2036. Oh, that's very sweet of you. So yeah, I fear it's also gonna take me a little while seeing how many parts there are just on the table right now. I also did not expect this build to actually have no steps. I have not checked the boards before I actually started building. It's a little bit of a surprise to me that they did not include that in 2016 yet. But what can you do? It's a tedious little process, but I love it. I have to say, I appreciate this sort of little detailing builds a lot. Overall, though, it's something that I usually do not recommend for many people, because it can be a little bit tedious and frustrating as well. What I think is always a very nice touch of the architecture lineup is that they actually implement these printed tiles, which are always a nice gift to or like a nice part to have, because it would very much drag away from, how should I say, the overall feeling if you would put a sticker up front, which is what I'm always very much complaining about when building UCS sets, because the plagues there always are stickers for some reason. So let me show you the front side. We have tiled it off with some 1x8 plates up front and some 1x4 plates here and here. And what is also kind of cool is like the rise of the actual nameplate by one brick as well, or like by one plate, to give it more of a 3D look to it. Also, as mentioned, here on this side, there are the hooks for the most for the building, which is on the most right side of this build. Overall, if counted out properly, I think it's 32 studs in width. All right, so after finishing this whole base layer, now it's already starting with some plates up top to give it more of a rounded off look. It's some trans clear 1x2 plates being aligned here on the left side. And as I see, the first thing that we're actually going to build is the Statue of Liberty, which I think is also one of the most awesomely done parts in this set, because it has this little mini figurine included, which you may know from the Harry Potter set on the big Hogwarts castle that came out some years ago, where they had these figurines done in a black color with different prints to them. Where this one is this greenish hued color, which is the same color actually as on the brick built Statue of Liberty, which is also, um, I think, one of the cooler colors that they brought out in the last couple of years. I'm not trying to hand all of those pieces. I like to stay in with pick up the Lego set as well as speed. Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you for saying that. I understand what you mean with that. I think sometimes the sets that are in the age category 3 to 5 actually are a lot of fun to build and very relaxing, because you do not need to constantly pay attention so much. So yesterday, for example, I was building this little city ice cream truck, which I actually really enjoyed building, just because it's a little bit less of a, how should I say, of a mental game to keep track of all the things, which are implemented in each step. So this here is not as big of a problem at the moment, because it's a lot of different colors. But for example, when building layers of the same color, just with different bricks, sometimes it's just, yeah, it's something else. All right, so we are layering out the foundation where the statue is going to sit later on. And you can also tell this is a little bit of an older set, because here they are still using these trans clear tiles for actually bringing out the water effect. While for the newer ones, like for example for the Singapore one, if I'm not mistaken, they already started using the light the light bluish ones, which are also trans clear, um, which you may know from, for example, the colors is the same as in the minifigure scale, or like the playset version of the Millennium Falcon. There in the back, the engine is also layered with these sort of bricks. Oh yeah, the F1 Technic style car. You mean the McLaren one? That's an awesome set though. But that is probably gonna take a while to build. That's for sure. I've built a very little Technic excavator, um, a couple of streams ago, and it also took me like forever for just a couple of hundred parts. I don't know. I have to say, with Lego Technic, I'm always a little bit slower than with the regular system parts, just because with Technic connections, I always want to make sure that everything is running smooth and all the gears are placed properly and stuff like that. So it sometimes can take quite a while. And also, it's a lot more frustrating when you miss a certain part, which I sometimes like to do, especially when talking on stream too. It's it can be a little bit difficult to keep track of everything that is is added to the build, and then at some point you realize, oh no, I forgot the part in the gearbox which was like 30 steps back, and you placed like 4 interlocking mechanisms up top. That's the moment when you're like, oh, can I just leave it like that? The light bluish gray fits wonderfully for the concrete parts of the build. Just enjoy the finished product, that's done. I also understand it to a certain part. I think Lego can be fun and can be enjoyed in so many different ways. That's the awesome thing. Like if you, even if you do not really enjoy building some of the sets, which I can understand, some of the builds are actually cooler to look at than to build. Um, that's the fun part is it's such an inclusive hobby, and it's just great because you can connect with people, and also it's very relaxing, I think, because like this is sort of an occupation where I just switch off my brain a little bit. That's why I'm also saying I appreciate the smaller builds a lot sometimes, just because it's not so much of a process, and you can take more time actually talking about it and actually making sure that the stream also is a little bit more entertaining, whereas with bigger builds it sometimes becomes a bit of a hassle to actually finish it through, to be completely honest. But for that I kind of planned to do a couple of bigger sets just in parted out into like 2 streams or 3 streams. I think that should work better, because for example, if you know the bigger version of the space shuttle that came out a while ago, that would probably take me at least 5 hours or so, and it would probably also not be the most entertaining to just sit through that. All right, let me just show you the base that we created with all the different tiles and jumper plates, which will be used for the decoration and especially for the buildings that we are going to place later on. And over here it's supposed to be this little island and the water. The water is built in the same way that is that is being used in the London architecture line, like the build for the whole cityscape. There they also did the the water underneath of the bridge with exactly the same sort of building technique, where they also layered black parts underneath and then just put transclear pieces on top to create a more or like a better fitting effect for the water. Yeah, that's totally true. It's like a little brain training exercise. I completely agree with you. Oh, I appreciate that so much. I think one of the great things about Lego is also like how you can how anybody really can get into it if it's the right sort of theme for them. Like I think the cool part is that there's so many different themes and topics that usually everybody can find something they're interested in, especially with them doing more 18 plus sets over the last couple of years too. um, it's great to see more and more adults actually getting into this hobby, because I think it's completely overlooked that sometimes when people say it's just a child's toy, because some of the sets are definitely not really meant for a child to experience the building experience. Not even so much because the instructions are getting harder or something like that. Mostly also because it's just difficult to handle too. Like for example, if you know the Lego Titanic or the Lego UCS 8080, um, it's just sets where I think a child could not really pick it up that well even. No, they have wild differences. I think they don't really have The Walking Dead, but they have stuff like Star Wars a lot, especially the diorama lineup that came out, and also stuff like Jurassic Park, where they had a diorama set coming out too. Or what I personally think is an awesome addition are the idea sets with, for example, the jazz musicians, which were announced a couple of days ago. Um, they are having a lot of different styles of builds, which usually I think would not really be that interesting to a child. Like, for example, also the DeLorean from the Back to the Future lineup, because first of all, I don't think that many children actually know that these sort of movies. Those were a little bit longer ago, so I mean, I actually love them, especially the second one, which is also why I kind of really like their set. But it's um, I also heard a couple of negative critiques about it, so I'm waiting a bit on that one. All right, so I made the base for the statue, which now we will put into the little 3 by 3 square that was left open and which fits in here perfectly. And now probably we will put the figurine on top. Yes. So the figurine is, like I mentioned, this little micro figure scale in green, and it is just mounted here with a one stud connection. All right, next up we are starting to build, I think, the side of, yeah, the under layer of the next building already. So I will put this one away a little bit, maybe over here. And let's just see which parts we need. Yeah, there's just a couple more pieces to go, I guess. So I don't think you see all of it. I can basically just put away my keyboard and instead let's just put the pieces into the camera frame. Getting some more stuff up here. All right, so we are set to continue our build by putting together a couple of beige bricks. And it's times 2. So we'll just do that twice in a row. We are building this part here, just to show you really quick. I like the inclusion of all of these grill pieces in beige, because I think this is rather easy to also include in different builds if you're actually using these sets for parts. Although in terms of price per piece ratio, I would not recommend using architecture line sets for the parts. Usually, you will probably overpay for what you get. Because usually, yes, there are a lot of pieces in these sets, but the pieces that you are getting are not very much reusable in those many ways. Uh, the mouse I'm using is some Corsair mouse. I sadly cannot tell you which one exactly. That was on Amazon's warehouse deals a long, long time ago. But it has been rather trusty. I think it's like 3 years old at this point. It's useful sometimes. You have to program it for the macros, but you can use it rather well for playing games like League, for example, which I sometimes do. In the meantime, I'm placing some more stud connectors to actually put these parts upon. And also what we are um, doing at the moment as well is putting jumper plates up top to make it mountable to different parts that are the rest of the build for um, this um, sky high building up here, which I'm not exactly sure which one we are building at the moment. So I would rather not guess wrong. Alright, so I've put together the baseline, and this will be mounted on our floor plate right over here, where there was a square left off, or like a space of 2 by 6 studs, and it's looking like this at the moment. Alright, let's continue on. From now on, it will be a lot of these beige bricks, I think, which can be rather useful. Oh, you think it's the Empire State Building? Oh, that's totally true. I guess, yeah, totally. I should have paid more attention to the instruction manual, I suppose. I'm terribly sorry. With buildings and architecture, um, remembering names is a little bit of a trouble to me sometimes. I'm gonna be completely honest about that. I usually also try to not act like I know my stuff if I do not. I think there's always pretty cringy if, for example, you watch some holiday advice and they just start reading off the plates of the places they're visiting and act like they actually know what they're talking about perfectly. So I'm always trying to not do that too much. Because for me, it's more about the building experience and actually interacting with viewers. I just love personal interaction. We're getting there. Just stacking up these stud connectors where there will be more detailing done to later on. And also it's getting a little bit more rigidity with different plates in between. I don't think of yourself as stupid. I think everybody has traits that are awesome about them. And I think most people underestimate their value in life a lot. Everybody has something they're good at. Let's see if I can find the last of these tiles to actually put that up. Ah, here it is. At sub-step number 12, it is looking like this, with a bunch of jumper plates up top. And now we are putting up some of the front side. I know that phrase. I sometimes use that in a similar way. My brain sometimes sadly is also out for lunch for too long. What a great way to actually word that. I love that. Alright, so we're just placing up the front side with these two grill pieces, and then on each of the sides there is the prepared 4x2 plates with more grill pieces, which will be getting interlocked here to create this sort of 3D layering effect to it. I think that's looking rather good already. I will show it to you a little bit closer on camera. Hope it can focus properly. And also we are putting some more stuff to the side of it. To put it a little bit um, well, I think the look it wants to create is to just have more width without actually putting more pieces down here. I think it's looking quite good, and I think it also is needed to make the connection with these jumper plates work properly. Yeah, the graffiti would have been cool. So there are some plates or like some printed tiles which have sort of a graffiti look on them. But sadly, these pieces only came out later on, like in other sets. Like, for example, the one in Tokyo has stuff which could kind of work for graffiti pieces as well. Um, but that's totally true. That would fit very well for like the bottom side layer of it, right? I have not been to New York personally, but I've seen a lot of videos about it, and from what I've seen, it has a great graffiti culture too, right? It's a little bit like Berlin in that sort of sense. Ah, not to live. Ah, I've heard that it's a struggle to live sometimes. Yeah, um, I've had a friend of mine that wanted to live on the East Coast, and at some point contemplated New York, but just in terms of overall living costs, it was just crazy to see. Like the amount of rent you're paying for a tiny square of 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 living space is sad to see, because the city itself looks so awesome to experience for a little bit longer too, I guess. But maybe that's just a romantic view of it that I have. I finished the second side of it by now. As you can see, the 3D effect comes out quite well, especially if looking up front in sort of a little bit of an angle. I I have to say I love people. Sometimes when in this sort of scenarios I'm rather extroverted because I love actually meeting people. I just sometimes get a little bit introverted when actually going out into public, I guess. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a frightful scenario for me still, but yeah, I'm working on it. I guess it's always important to just know where you're struggling at and just trying to improve upon it. So just if to mention it, I just placed it down here already because it's a little bit easier to put up these little one by one studs if mounted to the frame. I'm gonna put it a little bit more here so that everything is visible for the camera though. So at the moment we are basically just stacking up plates and one by one tiles. Oh, yeah, I need to build them first to do it in practice. Sadly, nobody can live in this version of it though. But it's crazy to think about. Like they built this whole thing in only 1 year and 45 days. Oh, I did not know that. That's awesome, actually. That's a whole different level of project managing. The alignment of the one by one bricks RS is a little bit troublesome, and these sets usually consist of a lot of these sort of building steps. So sometimes what I like to do is like just put them together at least vaguely properly and then just like slide over the edge of some table a little bit just to even it out more. Also usually with plates you also get it a little bit more straight. I swear to God, like yeah, I know what you're talking about with road work. So um I'm living in a European country where sometimes it's just ridiculous how long things are taking to until anything is achieved, basically. Um, so when you see there's construction planned, that's actually government planned construction, you just know this is gonna take at least a year or two more than they actually say it's going to take. As well, like we had motorway projects which have been going on for so long that some people have actually like didn't even know how it was before these construction sites were up. Just because they started driving later than they were actually built up. And I'm not talking about like a year or two, sadly either. And then you see how China constructs a whole dam in like the same amount of time that it would take people here to I don't know construct a tramway. I nearly missed. There's two plates between them. I nearly would have not seen that. I would have probably looked rather weird when when finding out that the plates that are supposed to be put up top here would not have fit properly. Yeah, we definitely share that pain. Definitely, yeah. Inefficient governmental work is like what the countries here are known for. Sadly. They just need to use up some of their money and their people's resources to do something with them, I guess. Yeah, I've heard about these sort of ghost cities that they have built up. I think they also put a lot of emphasis on train connections that are barely used to some extent, but I don't want to suppose anything on that subject. I've only watched like one documentary on those topics. All right, let me just count out if I've done this properly. So we have one, then we have two, 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 and up top there's one more 1 by 3 plate. Oh, cool, and then we are already tiling it off up front. All right, so the top side is looking like this. We have tiled it off here, and now all of this is probably just getting the same treatment as the lower parts were. Let's also build all of this together first so we can actually see how high it's going to be. All right. And I feel like this is probably also gonna be one of those bits where the steps are just gonna tell you to do one step 8 times. Yeah, the moment it's finished, the rent is raised. That's the first thing that we need to do afterwards. Nice one. So, after putting this layer in, these will be filled out with regular plates, and then I suppose another one of these rows is gonna get the 3D effect going a little bit stronger again. I would have to guess what the rent is in New York for just like a single studio apartment. But I would guess like what 2K a month or something like that for actually renting. I remember a couple of years ago when my friend looked, it was like I think for a shared space with like one other person, it was $1,500 each month. That kind of offset a little bit. All right, so we are getting up top a little bit more. Looks rather cool with this falling in sort of 3D effect that we had. I'm gonna tilt it a bit so you can see a little bit what I mean. On camera, these things always look a little bit more flat than in reality, sadly. Terribly sorry. All right, and up top there's more grill pieces. I very much appreciate this sort of layout itself of this set because it's rather short into the back too. Completely different than, for example, Paris or Tokyo, where there's a giant tower taking up a lot of space on one side. It's like $2,800 in DC. Jesus Christ! Oh, 2,000 to 3,500. Oof. That sounds like a pain to be had, honestly. Jesus. Let's just turn this around now so that we actually have it in the right angle. Oh, that's crazy to hear. Like, how can this the amount of money going into rent is like literally going crazy over the last couple of years, especially, huh? Jesus, slowly drying you out. Oh God, that sounds terrible, to be honest. It's sad to see, to be completely frank with you. Like, I think there's just how should I say? It's just um very sad, honestly, to just see how basically the middle class is completely getting dried out by stuff like that. Like, if you rent for that amount of money, like, if there's any chance, I think a down payment on actual property is not that much more anymore, right? I honestly do not know the exact credit rates for America, but for example, I'm on the economic side for studying. In Europe, it's also pretty similar, especially if you look around places like London or Berlin. The private rent prices there are also ridiculous in some areas, depending on the region, though. But it's just not affordable anymore at all. Like, it's just crazy, to be completely honest. So instead of buying property, by now, that's why I switched to building Lego, I guess. Yeah, that's true. Like, the taxes on, or like the overall taxation on property has been going crazy lately too. Like, around here, it's completely the same. Like, it's just frustrating to a certain degree. Like, it's like the government punishes you for actually trying to make a living, or like to build up something. Not a big fan of that at all. No, definitely not. But I can tell you the taxes in Europe are even worse than that. Like, it's just ridiculous. Especially the taxation on actual work in Europe is just so crazy to a certain degree. Like, for example, in Germany, the maximum taxation which you can get for each month is around 45% of your paycheck, which is not that hard to reach. It's like, I think if you make like 3K each month, or like 3.5 to 4K, you're already hitting close to that tax bracket, and it's just hurting. It's just hurting. How dare you try to live a decent, fruitful life? I show you. Yeah, that is very much true. That's a fitting comment for sure. All right. So let me just show you a little bit of what we've been building so far. So we are implementing more steps to get this curvature a little bit more aligned. And also up here, up front, there is a huge number of these grill pieces being implemented into the build as well. And these side pieces are quite cool. Actually, there is like this one stud connection of the white brick, as you can see. And these ones just like slide in here and place completely in line with these outside um, plates that were put on before. Is very flush of a look, I think. In Northern Europe, they were more kind of forthcoming with the citizens. Thought they valued quality of life over their compared to say here where it's give me what it's in your pocket now. Yeah, I've heard that approach from some of my American friends, to be honest. um yeah, sadly, especially over the last couple of years, it's been a little bit of a different experience for most of us here. um it depends a bit, like as long as you're if you're like really struggling, the government usually helps you out so that you actually can, well, survive, like let me say survive in brackets, because it's, well, you're making like the very poverty line, like just so you can, well, for the people that actually cannot work or stuff like that, it is great that they have a sort of way to actually survive, but also the amount that is is being given is very very slim. So it's definitely not a way to make a living off. So, what also is not the aim of that, but overall the socialism in Europe is, how should I say, is not very apparent in comparison to, for example, it also depends strongly which European country to look at. For example, if we look at countries from the European Union, like Sweden, for example, or Denmark, or also Norway, the overall help that the government gives you is different, and but also the taxation there is breaking your neck. It's always like very close to 40 to 45% in all of these regions. It's just the amount of money being earned is sometimes higher because the minimum salaries are a little bit larger, whereas with countries like, for example, um, yeah, well, my Polish friends sometimes tell me that is definitely not any case there. So there's more. It's more like fend off for yourself in every case possible. Yeah, it's very dependent where you are. But I think this is the same a little bit in the US, right? With different states being different sorts of safe havens for groups of people. Like, for example, I've heard like Delaware has no taxation whatsoever for companies. So basically, as long as you make enough money, you don't really have to pay any money. But if you make below that, or you're a private citizen, you get milked a lot more. So I guess it really depends on what's your business and what you're doing, right? By the way, we put the top cap on now, and our building looks like this. A lot of banks are based out in Delaware. Interesting. What a surprise! What a surprise, huh? I guess. All right, by now we are already starting our next building and be laying the base foundation of it with a couple of white and trans clear bricks. Quite a lot of trans clear bricks actually. Let me just show you what I mean. It's these 2 by 1 plates in a trans clear color, which are used as window lines for this building, I think. There will be a lot of stacking of these 2 rows. By the way, what do you think of these structures so far? I think they match the Empire State Building quite well for what I saw on pictures of it. I would have to Google it a bit more properly to assess it, but I think it's just looking really cute. The sizing is fitting. Oh, that's cool to hear. Like that's usually something that they don't get that right, so it's awesome to hear that. I think this is also actually one of the more fun to build experience from the architecture lineup that I had in the last couple of weeks. Like for example, the bigger pieces, like the Statue of Liberty itself, is also a wonderful Lego build, but it's a little bit more on the repetitive side because there's a lot of baseline as there is like this. mm, I think like at least a third of it is just like the base of it, and then the overall figurine itself also consists of a lot of build up in the inside. It's just getting plated off with this green. Where- Whereas with this, it's a lot of diverse building techniques as well. So just to show what I'm talking about on the next building, it's basically consisting of exactly these building techniques, which are just white and trans-clear plates being stacked over each other, which gives sort of a window design or look to them. And now there's more jumper plates being implemented and trans-clear pieces up front to layer it off a bit more properly. Yeah, exactly. That's the big problem with these sort of sets. The repetition in it is something that well, that can drag away some people because it's just all always the same. But when it's done, it's always looking really cute. I think especially these architecture sets are looking awesome when they're finished most of the time, but they can be dreadful to build. To be completely honest. Ah, the finished picture. Um, Let me just scroll through what it's supposed to look like in the end. So I think this should be it. Yes, there's already flat iron. So this is what we are going for. Can you see that? And as mentioned, it's just more stacking. Like on, oh, I don't want to count this. It's a little bit too small to see, but it's a lot of that. All right, let's scroll back up. So we have been. I see. I think I've seen one of them wrong. That's the Chrysler building. I see. Cool. Yeah, I've put two jumper plates in that I should not have. So it's just layering with lots and lots of trans clear pieces, which honestly are a little bit hard to see to a certain degree. Sadly, they also had no red underlining for the newer pieces in this instruction manual yet, which they have done in some of the later iterations of these sort of builds. The penthouse building in the penthouse apartment in the Chrysler building. Jesus Christ, $38 million. Oh, what a very cheap purchase option. With these sort of prices, I sometimes wonder if they how much they actually are going to rise over time. Still, like I think some of the buildings in the areas around me too, like especially in bigger cities like Berlin, are are just a little bit overvalued in my opinion. Like I don't know how many people actually would purchase something like that easily, right? Although I guess especially in like famous cities like New York, that's probably not gonna be vacant for too long. I suppose somebody rich enough will just snatch that up and just re-rent it or something like that. But it's crazy to think about how just one penthouse apartment can be worth $38 million. They are closing in on $100 million mark for some of these. Oh Jesus Christ! It's just to a certain point, like it's just so hard to even think about, right? Like, who would really spend like $100 million on a penthouse apartment? Like, I'm not sure how great of an investment that is. I can't for the love. Yeah, like usually, I guess that's people that just I don't know have inherited a lot of money and just really don't really know what to do with it. I suppose I don't. I can only think of possibilities how somebody could make that a purchase that they could justify for them for in front of themselves. Like it's not just about the amount of money that you have, but like just to spend that on something like a penthouse apartment, it just doesn't seem like that great of an investment, I suppose. Like with $100 million, I could might as well purchase a company. I would guess honestly, like or purchase multiple companies or build up multiple companies even. Like you would not even have to just work in America. You could even do like multiple limited companies with overseas transactions too. Just overall a way easier way also to minimize your tax spendings if done properly. Whereas with that, the only thing that you're really like getting is a huge tax bill from the government probably, or like from the state of New York. All right, looking for the last jumper plate to put up here before we're beginning the stacking of only the 2x2 plates. I hope, by the way, that me searching through this mess of parts is not too annoying in terms of sounds. If it is, please let me know. I can turn down the microphone a little bit. I like the sensitivity of it. And I don't know if it's very visible because as I can tell it, I've put it in quite small. I will enhance the picture a little bit. It's literally this build up of a lot of different parts. So it's 16 of these trans clear elements and 8 of the white sub levels. And now we are just stacking plates once again. Just in the same way now, all over the place. So yeah, I mean, $48 million is also sounding terribly high, but I totally agree. Like in term compared to New York, there's a rather affordable deal for it. If you think about it that way, that's totally true. All right, we are getting to the top of it. So I gotta say, building Tokyo was a lot less repetition than building New York. Um, but that's also because all these skyscrapers have um, a rather distinct design, which goes from the bottom to the top, I suppose. So let me just count if I put in enough of these plates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 2, 4, 6. I think I'm missing one. Yeah, I'm missing one. Good that I counted it. This little stack of plastic we just put together. All right, and then let's just align it. So there's 2 jumper plates here, and both of them are set in a way that this fits up top. And this is how it looks like at the moment. So the overall effect, I think, is cool. I think there are people out here in this world looking to purchase homes like that, and I'm putting back in Germany because over to the market. I totally know that feeling. Yeah, I feel bad every time I just purchase a piece of chocolate sometimes too. But that's also because I'm trying to very much cut back on that stuff. Like I'm a chocolate monster. I think these little chrome pieces up top also give it kind of something. You can even see the little shimmer that it gives off in proper lighting. And the top of it is being layered off with 1 by 1 pieces as well. Yeah, I'm a horrible sweet tooth. But it's like by now I've just started tricking my brain into it by for example just when drinking stuff, I just mix in like a little bit of flavor to water instead of going for a soft drink, because I don't know, I've been so addicted to just drinking stuff like Fanta for way too long. It's just really not good for me. I can tell how much worse I feel when I drink too much sugar, or like I consume it in general. It's crazy. All right, up top there's more of this build up for the antenna, kind of. Yeah, the orange Fanta is just awesome. But do you guys also have like the lemon one? I love that stuff. Like I could drink like freaking way too much of that. All right, we're just looking for the top piece to put upon. I'm not exactly sure which of these colors we're actually looking for right now. I suppose for light bluish gray, but the instruction also does not really look that properly for that, because it also shimmers the same way as the bottom layer. It's also possible that they just very much displayed these colors wrong. I think what it's meant to be is like this sort of top. I'm not completely sure, but there is not really any other piece which has a different color. The blue one. I've not tried the blue one too much. I think I had it like twice, but I kind of disliked that. I don't know. It was a little bit off-putting, but I think I also got the sugar-free version of it. Which sadly, I don't know. I've tried the sugar-free stuff too, but it's just, it doesn't taste the same. It kind of tastes weird, I think. Like the sugar-free Coca-Cola just tastes different. Or like if you've tried sugar-free Red Bull, I mean, yeah, Red Bull in general is like so terrible for the body, but like sometimes it's just nice. And then I kind of like indulging in just getting the sugary one, because the non-sugar versions of it is just tastes wrong to me personally, but I don't wanna talk it down at all for other people. It's like driving without petrol. A certain part. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's a little bit like when I drive an electric car. It's not the same feeling as when you have a regular combustion engine. It's just the feeling of driving it is different. I know that sometimes even electric cars are fast because of the easier way of having torque, which is basically the torque is just instant in comparison to the combustion engine taking a little while sometimes. But it's just, I don't know, the sound and the feeling of it is different. it's just it's just when there is no other sound than the tires, it can sometimes drag away from the experience for me a little bit. So we finished what I think is the Chrysler building here. Up top with the uh, top side of it, I think, which is looking the best of this build. The lower part of it, like mentioned, is just a lot of different plates being layered together. All right. And now we've reached the part where we are building the flat iron building, I think is what it's called. It's like the rounded one up front. Let me just scroll through. Maybe they're talking about it a little bit. Sadly, it's not getting mentioned. We need the market to go up so we can raise those rent prices. Yeah, let's wait for the inflation to happen first. Otherwise, the profit will not be high enough. The investors will hate us. I swear. So these, as you may see on the side here, um, also consists of layering many different colors of the same plate, which all are these wing pieces, which are kind of nifty to have, even though they are just one-sided wing pieces. Maybe for like a rooftop scenario or some sort of tent, it could be useful too. And other than that, it's just yeah, how many of these are there? Yeah, there's 6 layers of just sand colored pieces. I think I'm over scrolling something. Ah, yeah, up here. I just want me to layer the wing tips first. I've heard some reviews where the reviewer was complaining about the flat iron building in here instead of something a little bit more typical for New York. So what I personally think would have been kind of cool would have be this to implement the Central Park in some way, sort of form. Like even um, for example with the Paris one. Let me just see if I can reach that quickly. Just a second. And I didn't even break too much. Wow. Sorry, just bumped into my microphone a little bit. So, um, what I was talking about earlier, let me just take off this part because I always seem to nearly break it off, is like usually with these sort of sets, they implement quite a bit of drag into the back. So it is sometimes hard to display because of it. And that was something I was complaining for earlier. But what also is nice about this sort of building technique is the fact that you can, for example, display pieces like this building in the backside on like the front side park up front here way better. And I think if they would have implemented that to the same style as into New York as they did, for example, for Paris, it could have looked a little better too. Or like they could have just implemented more stuff. If I think um, about New York, there would be so many different like buildings and structures and even parks to be implemented, right? I think that's just something that could have been done a little bit better when thinking about it. But I guess because they just put in so many parts into these um, basically building fronts that they had to put in here, it kind of dragged away from that. Or like probably the amount of parts would have been too high for the designer to use it actually. So that's something that sadly happens quite often with Lego builds, is that the actual designer is just not allowed to use what they had in mind for the build, just because the costs would rise by too much. So they just skimp out on some of the features that would actually fit very well. Like the sugar-free Fanta of this set. Yeah, exactly. The flat iron building is exactly like sugar-free Fanta. That fits very well. That's a wonderful analogy. All right, we're looking for one more beige stud, and then we already put on the top side of it. I gotta say, like, they could have done this a lot better, in my opinion. Like, if you just look at this side, I'm not even gonna place it first. Just look at this building side. Like, I feel like if this could have been done with a different angled piece, and actually, it even if there would be like a stud to the side technique, it could have looked much better. Like even a bigger sort of space here with a sticker would probably have looked a little better. I, I don't know. I'm just really not a fan of this. Just looks like they kind of had to implement this. And also it drags away like from the overall skyline a little bit, right? I gotta say, like, my favorite so far is the Empire State Building. I think that looks really cool. And the little Statue of Liberty also is a cool implementation in terms of how it is actually done. Um, Whereas this here squares off quite a bit. Yeah, exactly. They didn't even really try with that. They were probably like, so we have like 50 parts over, and because we only have like 50 parts over, let's see what we can cram in here, where it looks a little bit like what we're going for, but in reality, like, yeah, screw it. That's exactly the sort of mentality that this gives off. At least they're plating it off a little bit to the top side. Well, it's just not properly, I think. Even like this looks a little bit weirder even now, to be completely honest. Like the plate to the top side kind of make it stand out even to a weirder angle. Yeah, the bridge would have been really cool. Like I think the bridge would have probably been the best implementation of it. Wait, let me just check for the long one. Then we can talk about that one too. We have not even discussed this on stream before anyway, so it fits quite well. So there the tower bridge, as you can see, also has this sort of same building style for the water, but just in general it looks a little bit more complete. It's just like if you look at this skyline, like it's less of actual building space that is put up in terms of bricks, but overall the usage of the brick being used is just better a little. Like it looks more full, right? Especially with the little big band up top and the tower bridge, it just gives it something. Whereas with this, it's just, I don't know, it looks a little bit more of like a collection of famous buildings that you're displaying next to each other instead of an actual like city lineup. The England's a triad. Yeah, that's it. I don't know why they just put so much more effort in that one. It's just like they kind of seem to care more for that for some weird reason. Where I would actually have preferred a lot to like implement stuff like the Brooklyn Bridge. Like if you think about it, the Brooklyn Bridge would probably fit perfectly into sort of this sort of cityscape. If you know the Los Angeles one, or no, not Los Angeles, sorry, the San Francisco architecture set that had the Golden Gate Bridge in it. I think that was the best implementation of any of these bridges. I sadly do not even own this myself because right now it's completely discontinued. And also, it's by now it's I think 100 and something euros. I don't even want to know what the dollar price would be. Probably even more because most of the times the sets in America for some reason are even more expensive than they're here. Yeah, right. I think the USA is actually a giant demographic for Lego from what I've seen so far. Understandably, so it's a great hobby. But to be honest, the Danish manufacturer Lego also kind of cheaps out Europe to a big degree. Like I don't know, there's a lot of complaints with Lego in different sorts of angles. To be completely honest, like the overall pricing of it over the last couple of years has been a subject that many people have discussed negatively. At the moment, by the way, we are building, I think, the last one of those skyscrapers, which in this case is starting with different angles that the build is taking shape in. Probably this is where we will hook it to the floor. and then this will be built up to the side in sort of a bulky manner. Yeah, I think the popularity is driving the prices, but also Lego had a little bit of an issue with the fact that they nearly went bankrupt a couple of years ago, and afterwards they were heavily being restructured internally, from what I've heard, in terms of their shareholder agreements and stuff like that, which made it a little bit. The focus of the company shifted a little bit, I think, in general, to pleasing the yearly estimated rates of return more than anything else, and basically subtracting anything that's not necessary to the to a set. So you can also see this shift of dynamic in how they put out newer sets sometimes, especially in the way they are pricing it. Like there was a Star Wars set coming out in June, which usually earlier was like, I think 35 to maybe 40 euros or dollars, whereas they just put it to 60 now. And they are always telling of this argument, yeah, inflation is hitting everyone very hard, which is true. To I completely understand that inflation is a big factor in it, but they were basically doing this way before inflation hit as hard as it did at the moment. So that's just their overall sort of excuse for doing that, no matter when. To be honest, I think we could be in a reset in a time of negative inflation, even, and Lego would still come up with a way to justify amping up their price model. All right, our little board is taking shape with stud connectors on each of the sides and a little bit more rigidity from this 3x3 plate up top. For the time, yeah. Completely agree. Completely agree. All right, and now that we put up a bunch of stud connectors on this, it's all just tiles which hold them in place a little more properly. So I think this will, yes, this will be done on all four sides first. And now we are plating it off with more of these tiles. This time it's not the 1x4 but the 2x4 plates. All of them are in light bluish gray, which probably is a big argument for some people, because these light bluish gray tiles are used quite often in this set and are usually pretty wanted for creations by users, from what I've heard and seen from Bricklink purchases as well. Ah, this is the New World Trade Center, right? So far, it's already a pretty cool bottom to be bottom line that we're building up. Like I sort of prefer this entrance way sort of look to it, with the 3D layering, different kinds of plates and building techniques. I think this so far is really the coolest, to be honest, and it's also pretty rigid from what from what I can see from it. by the way, the mounting technique here is the same as you've maybe seen in the Paris set before. So we have these two alignments here, and there's hooks on the bottom side that we have placed. And now these just grapple onto these. And as you heard, there's a little snap, and it's pretty rigid. So it usually does not fall off if not knocked down. Let's say usually, because I've already had these also flying around in the box if you've not been too gentle while transporting it. But that's it is what it is. Always gotta be honest. I think these sort of building reviews, I've seen so many reviews on YouTube where it's just like a hell of a lot of advertisement for the company, especially when people are trying to get partnered for getting Lego sets or something like that. It's just, I don't know. I really do not like it when they are not honest just for basically looking nicer or more advertisement friendly to the company itself. It's just ridiculous in my eyes. Like if you do not do this for the hobby sake of it and actually are honest about it, it's like why why even do it? Not a hobby to be in for the money, I think. Yeah, that snap sound is always awesome, right? I love that too. It's like so satisfying. In one of my last relationships, I had a lot of trouble for building that because it was annoying my partner quite a lot when constantly hearing this. But I just think Lego is such an awesome occupation. I very much value that doing this in my free time. So we're constructing this little box at the moment with some Technic bricks on the side, which will be used to build up more of the front line. Terribly sorry. And then there's more plates for rigidity being put to the matching side. So this first layer was put in this side, and now it's this side just to give it more rigidity. And then what I want to mention in terms of parts is this one here, which will be used as like the middle pole and also a structural element. I've not really seen this before. I would have to guess what it is, to be honest, but it's rarely used. Yeah, definitely. You're completely right. I think this one is a lot more elaborate in the building technique, whereas the other ones, as you've seen, are a little bit more, how to call it, basic in terms of what you actually are doing, because it's mostly the same. This one at least has a lot of different sort of like angles to it, which makes it a lot more fun in my opinion. I like it a lot when it's more of an intricate build in terms of part usage and connection possibilities. Like especially when you're getting these sort of different angles down here, and you're actually building this 3x3 sort of construction around it. That is, I think, a lot of fun to construct. Whereas building up the I forgot how to call it. I think, yeah, the Chrysler building. It just consists of basically layering the same thing over and over again. So that's not as fun in my opinion. Yeah, the boring building parts is where I get it passed to from basically any friend whenever we are building something together. And it's just always like, okay, at this point, please, you take this. And I'm like, okay. because I kind of appreciate it. I like the sort of style to it. Sometimes in my free time when I do not stream, I also build like sceneries. I like scenery shots for models, um, and I always very much like doing that. So for more realistic looking dioramas for model craft, but also for Lego since a couple of years, because I kind of appreciate the modular building style that this gives you, especially when layering out stuff like, for example, woodland sceneries or so. You can just do so many different layers with different plates and colors of plates, and it all starts looking pretty intricate when you know how to use 3D effects to it, or like know how to layer it in a way that gives it a little bit of intricacy. Yeah, scale models exactly. Like usually, I loved building these little military scale models like planes and tanks when I was younger, but I kind of sadly I stopped doing that for some years now because I just don't really have the time for it anymore. And I'm kind of a perfectionist for these sort of things. So I think I would also have a hard time doing stuff like that on stream, for example, because it's just, I don't know, I like to then be very detailed with it. Like, for example, all the rivets and bolts need to be put on with a different brush so that it has this little sort of alloy shimmer to it and all of that, you know? I'm a little crazy in that sort of way, I suppose. No, I'm not pro level at all. Would never call myself that at all. I always call myself an amateur. I just love these hobbies. All right, so this is still more of the technic layers. I think we need at least four of them in a row, and in between, it's always getting secured with different layers of plates. Oops. Just have to check if I put this on the right way. Yes, but no, this one also needs a sand colored brick in the middle. As you can see, this is always like one layer of these 1x3 plates and then 1x1 plate. And it's always getting shifted to both sides so that it gives it more rigidity and spacing in between. And this little flagpole that we put on with the Technic pin up in the bottom is used to basically just give it more structure and integrity too, from what I can tell. And I guess because we need a hole up top. Just scale models as a hobby. Sad it's a dying hobby. Yeah, that's totally true. I think it's very sad that scale modeling is a dying hobby, to be honest. Around here too, like we had so many cool hobby shops when I was a kid, and by now it's I would not even know if there is more than one in like 50-kilometer radius around me, and even that one is like not stocked good at all. Like it's just not a hobby that many people have anymore, sadly. If you're into it, you basically just have to order these kits online, and it's also like they have gotten quite expensive, some of them, to be completely honest. Just sad to see. But I gotta say, I kind of want to get back into it. But I feel like I need an airbrush gun just to like do that in a more proper way. I've done it with brushes a lot, but with brushes you always need to dilute colors a lot too to actually get sort of a good layered effect and actually like spread color out evenly. Whereas I think with airbrush guns, it's much easier, especially with the smaller scale models like the 1 to 72 ones. I think like most of the tanks and planes that I've built, I think were 1 to 72, but I'm not completely sure anymore. I also love these sort of model trains and stuff. I swear, I'm such a nerd in that sort of way. I think it's such a lovely hobby. It's just so relaxing too. In general, everything with scale model building is just so perfect for switching your brain off a little bit and not think about daily struggles and problems and just get into like doing something that you love. Then sit on my shelf as an so I start making them with adding electronics. Ooh, but that's awesome. You add electronics to your model scale builds. That's very cool. Like, do you also put like a bunch of LEDs in there? I guess sounds like such an intricate thing to do. Awesome. The one by one bricks up top always are a little bit of a struggle to align, right? But let's see if we can manage by just like pressing it on a flat level surface, just sliding it out a little bit. Hmm, it's a little bit better, but still more crooked than I like. But I think it's as good as it gets, sadly. I do add LEDs, but I tend to use Pico LEDs because that's a little. Oh, I see. I understand. So, I guess yeah, because LEDs usually are quite big for that sort of models, right? I'm not um, very very well informed about the electronical side of doing stuff like that, but I love the look of like little light up model kits. I think that's very awesome. I think that's also cool for Legos. I've sort of thought about doing that myself too, but I've checked it a bit and I am terrible at soldering. So it's like the one thing that I would need to be pretty good at, I think, to actually make that look quite okay-ish. I sadly do not have any skills in. No, you don't sound like a nerd at all. You just sound like somebody very interested in a very awesome hobby, to be honest. Like that's super cool. So the upper side of our last building has been put together in most of it. I think there's a little bit missing still. But the at least the second part that we had to build, we can now implement in our main build. Here on this side, let's turn it in a way that is actually a little bit more visible. So it has these three lines of plates in the bottom, and on here, this just connects to it. So, all right, let's continue with layering more of it. Because 1 to 24 scale for cars and trucks, and plain kits 1 to 144. You can use 30 scale RC parts. I see you're using 1 to 32 scale RC parts. The match right up and the fabrication is minimal. Oh, that's so smart. I see. So I didn't even know that for the scale of 1 to 32, there aren't that many like electronic cars. Like I think Kyosho made some with this mini C lineup they had a couple of like a decade ago or so. I think is the only thing I still know. That sounds very intricate and like a very awesome hobby, to be honest. Like just overall like constructing that first like the full model kit and then actually making it have powered up functions, that's just super cool. I could totally see myself getting in stuff like that, to be honest. Like um that's something I love about Lego too, when you can just put on a bunch of lights and motors to it and actually make it work and function properly. um I also thought about just like doing my own creation of like a moving bridge or something like that with some lights implemented in it, but for that, like I mentioned, I would kind of have to pick up soldering, I think. 1 to 24 little RC drift cars. That sounds like a fun thing, though. So for the top of it, we have basically just put together a bunch of sticks with one by one connector bricks, which now will be basically there will be added a bunch of slope pieces in this bluish color. Like this is like what bluish gray, I guess. These off-road vehicles. Ah, I see. 1 to 32 off-roading vehicles. Yeah, that makes sense because probably that's rigid enough to actually use these sort of engines and servo motors, right? They also implemented 32 of these slope pieces only in this step by by being a little bit lazy with it, just telling you to build it 4 times too. Like this is how these sloped areas are going to look like, and all of them are just being being put onto the sides of these with the connector bricks up top. I know you just buy the parts straight from China since I don't really need the entire car, just suspension. Ah, that makes sense. Like probably on AliExpress or something like that, right? I don't mind at all. By the way, I never mind if somebody likes your hobby. I love nerding out on these sort of topics. I hope I'm not too cringy. Making some progress with basically doing the same thing for 32 times. just slide it on the table a little bit to get it a little bit straighter into shape. And then it's just layering them next to each other. So it is getting to be a quite massive shape. This is probably the most parts being used in all of these buildings too, just because of the sheer amount of height that we need to reach with it. And all these little angles, especially also on the bottom side of it, makes it quite awesome. Alright, that's the last of these. That is just being put upon here. And now we actually have created this whole shape up top, which we will just put into what was left upon here. There is, like I mentioned, this part with which has a hole in the middle, and with this little flagpole connector we can basically just, to show it to you a little more properly, we can basically just slide this in here and click it into place. Just align it properly and it should look okay. So this is where we are right now. I'm showing the backside, terribly sorry, but it's the same for both. Oh, that's so sweet of you to say. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. That's very, very kind of you. I'm just trying to be as authentic as I can. I think it's horrible if people just try to act like somebody else and just like try to impersonate somebody. It's just always a little. You can always tell when somebody is not honest. Just does not give off the right feel. Alrighty, implementing the top side of our build. There's another row of this 1x1 connector which I nearly missed. And after that, we just have to put upon some of these bluish plates. I guess it's blue-gray, I suppose. But it's kind of hard to actually call this color code out properly. Alright. So this is also looking quite similar to the rest of the structure. In the middle of it, we also have a little connector pin, or a connector hole to better call it. It's kind of hard for them to take me serious. I don't know what this is. Yeah, exactly. Like that is exactly what I mean. Like, it's so much better to just be yourself. It's just people totally can tell the difference, and trust me, like everybody likes you 10 times more when you're yourself. I'm sure. You come across as such a friendly person. I'm sure you will have great responses to it. So by now, this is close to being the top side. Just snaps in place too. I have this little connector rod as well. And I should align it in this angle to actually get the look that they are aiming for. And I think this is the last pieces that we are actually putting on. I gotta say, this is huge. This is like probably the biggest of these buildings, of these sort of architecture buildings that I've had in any of these builds. Personally, I know what you mean. Like I sort of have what do you call that? Like I also have like a bit of a resting annoyedness to my face, I guess, which does not actually mean that I am angry or annoyed at all. I don't know, it's just the way that I sometimes look like. And I also got told by people that I always come across like so super, like, how should I say, like, weird or like annoyed with everything. Just not really something that we can influence, but smiling a lot has helped me a lot. Yeah, resting beefers. I've heard that before. Like some people actually told me that. Yeah, by now, you know, when I was younger, I had a lot of problems and issues with myself. But over the years, you just kind of realize like you gotta be happy with yourself before other people um, really take you serious that much as well. So I'm always trying to look at everything from a positive angle, and people that don't appreciate how you are, just you can change that. You just, the worst case, if it's too bad, sometimes just ignore them. I think helps a lot. And as you are saying, yes, being proud of yourself for what you are is super important. And maybe many people are just always trying to like talk that down, but that's something that should never be the case. Let me just clear up the space a little bit, and then I would like to discuss this set a little bit more for the end of our stream slash video for today. So for that, I also this time I was prepared enough to actually look up the American site for this set. So people can pick up. Yes, the confidence you have in yourself is always something people pick up on. You're so right. That's such a wonderful motto. I completely agree. I agree with that statement. Like loving yourself is very important for actually coming across as a friendly and good person in life, I think too. Because as you mentioned, like other people can really just sense that. Like if you're insecure about yourself, other people can sense that somehow, and that's just something that that is pretty critical sometimes in human interaction. It's totally true. So what I wanted to mention here, as I spoke a little bit about it, let me just see if I can take it apart properly. Let's ignore that we just dismantled some of it again. We have built this giant structure of a tower, which I think is one of the biggest architecture structures besides the Burj Khalifa from the Dubai set, which I sadly have not built yet, so I cannot show you that. The only other very large one was the Tokyo Tower, but that is one of those sets that I was kind of disappointed with because it was just a bunch of little connector struts going from basically this height up to this height. So it was just the most lazy way possible for Lego to handle that. Whereas with this set, it's actually like super intricate. There's like so much building steps to it, and I think it also looks really cool in comparison. Like with the colors are just matching rather nicely. It's this pastel blue color also comes out in a nice hue, has a nice hue to it, and comes across pretty good, I think. Um, I'll just leave this off and like put this to the side for now. Um, so that I can handle the rest of the set a little more easy. And I think the rest of it should be rather structurally safe to at least move around a little bit. So what was also, or what is great to look at least I think it is kind of nice for the eye, is the Empire State Building, which has all of these little grill parts to it. I think giving it a lot more like little 3D detailing too, because it all looks like it has a bunch of different surface areas to it. Also, the top side kind of goes together pretty uniquely. It also is kind of cool for the Chrysler building, where the top side has these chrome colored little dragon teeth, which give it a little bit of this shimmering hue, like you could see. And depending on how the light hits it, it sometimes has this very low key chrome color to it, like silvery chrome. It's not the it's not the best colored version of it. I've seen better silver ones that they've did a little bit in later times. The Flatiron building can kick rock. Yeah, that thing yeah, is like literally the saddest thing about the whole build, I think, right? Like they just have not cared enough to really implement anything properly, so they just like they this whole thing here. It's just like if you look at this from this angle, it's just terrible. There's no way around it. Like I definitely do not like this at all. But strangely enough, I know it's like nearly no parts being used here, which also can be a big critique point, because like all of this has like is loaded with different stuff, and then this is just like so tiny. But at least the Statue of Liberty looks properly, I think. Like with the form of the baseline and the little green plates to basically simulate the grass of the island, it fits a little bit better at least. And also I love the little minifigure. Like the micro scale figure is just pretty cute. I hope you can see it properly. I will hold it up a little bit better. Polly Pocket size, yeah. Yeah, that's true. Oh, I completely forgot that that was a thing. Yeah, the Polly Pocket lineup that was there like, what, 15 years ago or so? That has kind of the size of this. Totally true. Um, let's talk a little bit about the amount of parts that you're getting with this maybe. So, like I mentioned, this time I do not have only the the Euro version of it, but I actually have the US retailing version of it. And even though you see the year this was brought out was earlier than, for example, the UCS Millennium Falcon, it's still on the market. It's apparently going strong because you can still order it on Lego.com without hearing any signs of discontinuation to it. I guess because that's the only set they have brought out for New York besides the Statue of Liberty, like ever. I guess it sells probably really well still. What I can definitely tell you is they raised the price of it, because if I'm not mistaken, this was $50 at some point, or like 49.99. Also, the same as it was in euros, which also was like 49.99. I would have to check it in. I think in euros it's at 55 at the moment, but I'm not completely sure. Most of the times the prices actually match each other, so it's kind of strange to even see that there is a difference at all. I think $60 is a lot for this set, to be completely honest. Like you see, it has 598 pieces, so you're getting less pieces compared, or like you're paying more than 10 cents per piece actually when you pay suggested retail price for this, which kind of well, there's no value at all to it. Like for example, in comparison to something like, if you know it or you've heard about it, the Speed Champion series of cars, which I always like to reference to, just has such a better price per piece ratio, especially because they are also constantly going on sale. Whereas with sets like these sets are honestly not upheld in most retail stores anymore. I kind of have the feeling that Lego is just still selling it on their website because they have overproduced it a little. Because for most retail stores around here, at least, they have not listed it at all anymore, even though it's not on end of life on Lego.com. Um, which might be a sign of just like having it overproduced and just like trying to get out the rest of it. Um, but yeah, I wanted it in my collection, so I kind of accepted it. I think I paid 40 for it, or like 45, because I was a little bit late to it, and there was like um, not really that many people who actually were selling it at the time of me buying it. Um, because I honestly also thought they would not continue it for the amount of time they already did with this. Because usually with Lego sets after 3 years, it's like the maximum amount I would suggest for waiting before actually getting it. And so for this, it is surprising to see it is on the market for so long. It's surprising to see they had the diligence to actually put up the price even more than it already was. It was exaggerated before. Now it is at the price tag where I would definitely not pick it up. Um, Especially also because most of these bricks are like really tiny, which is not a good selling point for most people either. Um, I think in general, it is a great look to it, which can be said for most of these architecture sets, is that the building experience and the overall part being used are not the best, but once you have finished it, it's just a cute display piece. Like I can say about it what I want. I can talk a lot of bad stuff about it, but at the end of the day, I appreciate the look that this gives off in the shelf. So I'm kind of glad for this build, just for display purposes. For actual building fun, though, as you have maybe seen during the build, it was a little bit dull at some points. Like my favorite part was the One Trade Center. It was actually really really fun to build, just because it has a lot of different angles and ways that they actually build up this huge skyscraper. Whereas, yeah, also mentioned this one, the Chrysler building, is just like this, the flat iron in the middle. They are just like placeholders. I feel like the Empire State Building at least looks cool, but these two are more placeholders than anything else, I think. Okay, first here, I clocked it about an hour and 48 minutes. An hour and 48 minutes. Minutes, wow. She was in charge of the road workers at my neighborhood. I would definitely try to implement it probably faster than what you've mentioned it taking time. I would be terrible at construction work probably though. I also gotta say I tried to build it as fast as possible to a certain degree, while still trying to not rush it too much. I think if I would build it for myself, I, it the time would be like around 1.5 hours or something like that. So if you count it up in terms of price per hour, it would be not the best for $60. But as mentioned, if it's for a lower price, like for $40, I would definitely still say it's worth picking it up. For more than that, um, it's a tough call, because honestly, like for 40 euros, even in the architecture lineup, or like especially let's talk about $60. I think, even though I would not pay MSRP for any of these sets, let's keep in mind what Lego charges, and even if we think about what Lego charges for these, you would find different sets being worth the money way more. For example, I constantly see the London one on rebate, which in my opinion just gives off more vibes in general. Like I actually am a way bigger fan of New York City. I think New York City is an awesome place. I still really want to visit it. Um, if I didn't bother you recently. Oh, you didn't bother me at all. I'm very happy for chat interaction. I think that's the most fun about streaming or doing videos. Just like actually getting to read what other people think about it. Nah, 45 minutes sounds too fast. Like maybe an hour if I'm like super rushing it. But honestly, like at some point you know, like that's like what I was mentioning it. It's just fun to kind of relax to it too, right? Um Like with this build, I think it also took me a little longer because nothing was sorted. Whereas with the newer architecture sets, at least they sort out some steps of it. Usually it's between 2 and 3 steps depending on the build. For these ones, I think it was only 2 for this one and for the Tokyo one, which at least you have a little bit easier of a time to know what parts you need, because as you also saw, you need quite a lot of space when there's no building steps at all. Like all of this area right here, which is like 70 centimeters of space, was just like basically used up for nothing but parts. And it is kind of annoying to a certain part. That's also why I think that building mocks on stream is a little hard, because I just need a lot of different bricks and colors, and usually it's just there's no space for it. It's like just, where do I put all the boxes? So I appreciate building steps a lot, and I'm glad that the newer models include them. Another set that's literally the same price range as these is the Paris one, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Paris as a city. That's more of a personal thing though. I just had some bad experience in the city. I think in terms of value, you're getting more building experience out of this one too. I'm not exactly sure how many parts there are to this one, but just like in terms of volume, it just feels a little bit like it's more, like, you know what I mean? Like, just you're getting a little bit more for what you actually are paying. And maybe it's also because it's a little bit more diverse of builds that are put together in this. So I think the Eiffel Tower especially is like a pain to build, but it kind of looks good when once you're done. But I also gotta tell you, like, aligning all of these completely straight is just horrific. Yeah, this black building in the and the back kind of looks like a deodorant. It's very much true. This is a good input. I kind of agree with that statement. Looks a bit weird, huh? But gotta say, kind of fun to build because it has some sloping technique to the side, which make it kind of cool in terms of reflecting the light when you put it in your display. Um, but to get back to what we actually built this stream, um, I think what is the best part about this set is just the amount of different techniques in the World Trade Center. I think that is the building you're going for the most if you're wanting to build this set. The Empire State Building also was fun, but it was also built very fast. I think I didn't even take like 10 minutes for most of it, which is not the best. I would say like what, 20 minutes max. I fear was like the time we spent on this building, and in comparison, it looks good as long as you do not put this next to it. But then once you have this sitting next to it, it just kind of looks a little weird in terms of height. But as you mentioned in the 23 minutes. Awesome. Okay. Sorry. I kind of thought that. See, time is flying faster than I thought it was. That's happening when you enjoy it. So for 23 minutes, I guess it's okay in terms of building time, I suppose. I could see it being a little bit more intricate if they match the overall height of everything a little better. And also, I do not really know the height of the Eiffel Tower, but it kind of seems weird that the Eiffel Tower and the one World Trade Center are basically at the same height without the antenna. So this, let me show you, like, this doesn't come across weird from the angle, but like if I put these next to each other, like, this is where the one flag ends, and I'm just moving my finger over here, like exactly at the height. It's hitting at the same height as the top side of the World Trade Center. I'm not that close in height, right? Like, I was just kind of looking a little bit off now that we have put together everything. I think it was better when it was just a little Statue of Liberty in this one. By now it's just kind of like, what? It's kind of hilarious. It's also the same, like, the Tokyo set has this mountain in the back, which also drags everything, like in terms of size difference, it just makes everything look a little weird too. I still can't get over the fact too that the Flatiron building just basically is nothing but a joke. I think if they would have left this out, it would not really miss anything either. To be completely honest, this is just not done properly. I think there's different building techniques. There are brackets that could be used. Like, for example, there are these one by one sort of flat style holders which have a stud up front. And if you use baguette brick with, like, for example, a one by one baguette brick, which could even be printed, which I've seen multiple times being implemented too, um, it would actually look like the proper shape, because, like, usually this is, like, if I remember it correctly, at least from seeing it on pictures and movies and in movies, it's like it's a half square, right? It's a half square that goes from this side to this side, and just the front is like a curvature. Where this is just like weird. It's just like from the moment you look at it from an angle, it just does not fit properly anymore. Which is kind of sad to see. Yeah, I think if they would have implemented at least like a joke version of the Central Park, it would have been better fitting for New York City. Because I would think of that faster than, for example, of this building. But yeah, it is very famous too, I suppose. So it makes sense why it is implemented. Just could have been implemented a bit better, I guess. But I don't want to complain too much. As long as you do not buy this for full retail price, it's still a fun experience if you like tedious work. Like, you have to be a little bit of the person to like tedious work. It is like layering greebling on the Star Destroyers and stuff like that, or the Millennium Falcon. 300 meters to 546 meters. Oh, thank you for checking that. That's actually awesome to know. So basically, this is size completely wrong to this. This should be like nearly double the size, huh? It's ridiculous. But I guess it's always just a scale depending on the one model. I very much appreciate that you converted that into meters. I kind of understand how feet are calculated. Feet are like a third of a meter, I think. I've been used to it from American friends, because most American friends I have are always trash talking me when I use metric scales. Which I can understand too. Like, yeah, it's just a different way of, well, a different metric. That's all. I gotta say, the only thing that sometimes confuses me is calculating in inch, because it's this weird 2.54 centimeters, which are basically uh, always the factor you have to calculate everything into. Magic actually makes more sense. I guess the reason many places use metric is just because it's always this 0 to 100 scale of things. It's always just one thing equals to these amounts of tens of things, I guess. Whereas with calculating feet, I always have the problem of I never know exactly, like, is it, I think it's 0.3 something meters. So it's always a little bit, it's like the calculation for Fahrenheit too. Whereas I think once you are actually in the system, it's not hard, because you understand, like, for example, 30 degrees is very cold, or like 100 degrees is very hot. But as if you hear that as like being used to metric units, it's like 30 degrees for us is very hot, and 100 degrees is just death, basically, because it's like boiling everything. Everything you do. And that God, that's an hilarious statement. um, I kind of don't even really know the backside story to it, but I think Fahrenheit was implemented because it was this sort of temperature at a certain point of the year sometime, and from then on everything else was calculated around that measurement, I think. But I'm not completely sure. I mean, if with temperature, as we can also use Kelvin, I guess, but then it's even more confusing because like zero Kelvin is like minus 276 degrees centigrade or so, I think. So it's like even more confusing than anything else. I think even Fahrenheit is easier to like translate once you know the starting point for it, I guess. Um, but I don't want to make this too much of a discussion. It's always just very very fun to see the differences in it. Especially I interact with people from America quite often, and I've just gotten used to this sort of system, to the imperial system. Is making more sense to me now than it has made sense to me 10 years ago. So no problem whenever you feel like wanting to tell me something in inch of heat. It's totally okay. Where I never know it exactly is pounds, but I think pounds is also just like half a kilogram or something like that for most of the time. All right, so you can explain to me one day. I still don't have a clue. I don't want to act like I'm a professional in that either. I just have gotten used to like getting told, for example, somebody is 5 feet 10, and then I stand there. At first, I stood there being like, "Ha, interesting." Whereas nowadays, I'm more like, "Okay, you're like in a range of centimeters slash meters. I can guess where we're at." So, whereas with pounds, usually when I hear somebody's like 200 pounds, I'm like, is that good or is that bad? Still, because I just cannot really implement that in my brain somehow. Kind of need to look that up better, to be honest. Speaking about weight, the the overall set is also not giving you a lot of weight in terms of brick value either. I think miles to kilometers is a conversion rate of 1.5 kilometers is 1 mile, I think. Yeah. Or something in that realm. Please do not quote me exactly on it. But I think we're pretty close with that. Because most of the time, like when you're driving like I think 65 miles per hour, the conversion rate is like 100 kilometers per hour for that. Which is kind of the way I started remembering it. Other than that, can I say anything else that would be maybe interesting for this set? So, okay, I can even tell you in imperial units. The skyline measures 10 inches in height, 9 inches in width, and 1 inch in depth. So we even figured out that. And I mean, the age recommendation of 12 years, I think, is not very fitting. I think in terms of the overall difficulty of it, it's you could even hand this to an 8 year old and it would be possible. But the overall problem, why it is usually put at a higher at a higher age difficulty, is just because it's a lot of repetition that the younger audiences usually don't really want. To be completely honest, I think most children will not experience this set to be a fun building experience at all. I'm not even sure if many adults will experience this to be so much fun, to be honest, just because it's a lot of repetition. It's a little bit like the Colosseum, but at least it's different buildings. Like if you know the Colosseum, that's literally like 9,000 parts where all of the walls are literally built with the same pieces. It's crazy. And it can be fun, but it can be dull as hell, depending on the sort of character you are and if you like this sort of tedious activities or not. Yes, I managed to bring across a little bit of information. I'm super happy. The Roman Colosseum, yes, exactly that one. The big Lego 18 plus set from 2000 and I think 20, yes, because 21 was the Titanic, which by the way probably is one of the coolest sets that have came out in the last couple of years if you like really like huge building experiences, which I kind of try to negate the last couple of months just because I start a build and then it takes like a freaking half month till it's finished because I just lose the motivation for it sometimes with these sort of bigger builds. So it's like with these you start it and you finish it and you just enjoy it. And even with the more tedious ones, even with this one, I still can say I very much enjoyed the time I spent with the build a lot, and especially because it's awesome to have the interaction with the chat too while building it. I think if I would just build it for myself, I would have gotten a little bit more bored from it, to be completely honest too. How large was the Lego Titanic set? To be honest, I have to look that up, but let's just do that really quick. We don't really need the space anymore, so let's just move the keyboard back to where we can use it. Let's see if we can find it. So the Titanic is how large actually is this set? I think it was like close to a meter or something like that. So let's see if we can find the exact size, or like I guess we can just Google it as well. Let's just maybe do this separately. Let's just type in that really quick. Lego Titanic length inch. So it is 54 inches long, apparently, which would be like a meter and 10 or 15 centimeters, I think, something like that. It's in the realm of the Star Destroyer, the Devastator UCS model, I suppose. Just in comparison to it. Yes, when the Lego Titanic is built more solid than the original ship. That is very true. Probably the plastic thing does not bulge that much at all. Like, this is a very cool set. I still have to get this at some point, and this would also be something awesome for building out on stream to a certain degree. I think just because it is so much little details and different building building steps where you actually are fluctuating between a lot of different techniques. It's not just the same on every side like it is for the Colosseum, for example, but you actually build a lot of different layers to it. You have a top side with a bunch of little details, and also even an engine room department in the inside of it. So it's not even hollow or anything like this. It actually has an inside to it, which I love when they implement stuff like that. For example, with the Star Destroyer, or like with the Millennium Falcon halfway kind of. Also, they just skimped out on that. At least the Millennium Falcon had some like inside structure to it, like two little rooms, but also not a lot. Nah, sadly, that's the only feature that's not implemented is the little Jack and Rose mini figurines. That would have been hilarious, though. That's probably the greatest suggestion for the set that I've ever heard. Nice one, too. All right. So let's just drag this into screen one more time. So I think I've summarized most of my thoughts for this set. So as a recommendation, I don't know if I can give you the best recommendation for actually getting this one. if you're inclined on getting it before it reaches end of lifetime, I suppose it's a good time because it's out since 2016. If you're a collector, it might be okay, especially if you do not build it. You will probably have more fun with it because the retail price would just go up a bunch once it hits the resale market. That's what we saw with basically all of the other architecture sets, especially with the older ones. Like the older sets are not good sets. Like the older architecture sets, like the Venice one too, like honestly they are not great Lego sets, but just because they are rather limited, the price of it has just gone up like crazy. Like even with this one, when it was sold out, I already saw it instead of the $50 or $60 tag. I've already seen it for $80 upwards, and that's just definitely nothing to pay for it. If you plan on wanting to display it at some point, I would get it for like a reduced rate once it's close to being filtered out, and then just like keep it in storage till you want to build it, because never pay resale for these sort of sets. It's just not worth it. If you really are inclined to get it and you have not bought it while it is on the market with these sort of sets, buy it used. Some of the pieces sometimes are missing slightly, but at least you do not overspend as much. Usually at least you pay retail price for it when you get a used Lego set, whereas with the original boxed ones on the resale market, it's just nothing I would recommend supporting at all, to be completely honest. Like I know it's a business for many people, but I personally just do not like purchasing resold goods because it's just not monetarily friendly, and I kind of always feel very guilty for doing that. I don't like supporting resale for most of my purchases at all, because it's just dragging out money where it's not needed to be spent. But for this set, like I mentioned, this is one of those that I cannot give a clear recommendation at all. If it's not being phased out yet and it's just a regular set that you think of buying, there is better stuff out in the market for sure. Like this is especially some of the buildings like we discussed are just not good enough for it. Um, I would rather suggest the newest one, for example, the Singapore one, or as mentioned, the Paris or London one, are better building experiences. But what I definitely should mention as like a closing point to my argument, if you're a great fan of New York City, like I am, it is kind of a must-have because you just kind of want to display it somewhere. Like that's the reason I have it, and that's why I wanted to build it too, just to like put it into the bag and display it next to my Statue of Liberty somewhere. Where I still need to find a fitting matching place for it in the background of my stream too. Maybe now I feel the motivation to actually do that. Um, Other than that, I think for this set I've talked more than enough about it. I hope that you also were able to get sort of a good overview and experience of this set and the build, which was rather mediocre in terms of excitement. I hope the stream slash video still was a little bit of fun to watch. For the DC one, I actually can suggest the what is it? I think the White House was put out, and I think one other building, but sadly no skyline of it. So that's something I would definitely also get. I think Washington DC is a very remarkable city, and it would be awesome if Lego would actually bring out an architecture lineup of Washington DC as a full cityscape like this, and not just as like one of the buildings implemented in there. That would actually be really awesome too. Um, I hope the overall building experience and the video itself were okay in terms of enjoyment, or like in terms of it being interesting enough to actually be watched. um, I'm still at the start of streaming or doing videos in general. So if you have any suggestions, please always feel free to put them into the comments too. Like if it's watched on YouTube, especially, I'm always super happy to hear any sort of critique. I'm just very curious what I can improve upon. And other than that, I want to thank you guys, especially. I want to thank the viewers that have been in the live stream today. It was such a lovely experience to actually talk with you guys. Um, and it's so awesome to read that it was a pleasure for you to. Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you so much for that. I very much appreciate you saying that. So I totally look forward to streaming again. So usually I try to stream every day, trying to do it at the same time around. Well, in my time, usually between 4 or 5 in the morning, I start. But I guess in America, that's a little bit different. I'm not exactly sure which time it is. I think usually it's between 10 or 12 in the evening, I suppose. Um, So I would be totally happy if we see each other again in one of the next streams or videos. And other than that, I wish all of you a wonderful morning, day, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on the time of day that it is in your country at the moment. And till the next time, I'm very much happy to look forward to our next stream. Till then, goodbye and have a great day.